There we go. One of the things that biological research, biological psychology does is that it looks at research. It looks at all this this pile of research that we have we have access to. Psych articles, psych info. If you look in there, there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of articles that you can gain access to. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to utilize this research to make our lives better. Okay. A lot of human diseases involve malfunctioning of the brain. And I'm going to show you, if I can get on the internet, I'll show you exactly how drugs cause a malfunction in our brains. And one of the reasons why we should probably stay away from all the bad stuff. So who gets to decide what the bad stuff is? Well, psychologists do, doctors do. If you've ever tried something and it didn't work, then you do. I had a friend back at on another reservation, and he got drunk one night, and all kinds of bad things happened to him. He got in a bar fight, and somebody kicked his teeth in. He lost all of his teeth last time he had anything to drink. He said, "This is stupid." He didn't even know what was happening. He got his teeth knocked out, all of his teeth kicked in, and he didn't even know what was happening. He didn't feel a thing. He thought that was a pretty good deal until he sobered up. Then he felt it, but then he decided that this is nuts. This is crazy. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I'll show you exactly why alcohol does crazy things to your brain, and crystal meth and cocaine, if I can get on the internet. There are three ways to look at the brain behavior relations. One of them is somatic intervention. Anything that has to do with soma has to do with the body. Somatic intervention has to do with the entire, your entire body. So somatic intervention means what happens to your body when this goes haywire, when your brain goes haywire. We can talk about mental illnesses like depression. We could talk about, well, actually right now in SBS, we're one professor down. Everybody's got a full load. We're all really stressed out. All of us are. And we're all reacting to it. Well, did I tell you guys about my dream? I had a dream. Well, you know my dream.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was the absent-minded professor dream. And I was in class. It's kind of like I started out today. If Aaron hadn't been here, I'd still be, piddle farting around. But it was it was my absent-minded professor dream. And it started out with, I went to class, I got there on time, and I had my roster, but there wasn't a clean sheet of paper. So I had to go to my office to find a clean sheet of paper. Couldn't find a clean sheet of paper. So I started running back to my office, or back to the class, and I couldn't find my class. Then at some point, as I'm wandering around campus, all of a sudden I lost my pants. I don't know what happened to them. 1 second they were there. This is a dream. 1 second they're gone, and I'm wandering around without any pants on. And now it's the pantsless dream. What happened next? So I can't find the classroom. Then I decided to go back to my office. Maybe my pants are in my office. I decided to go back to my office. Couldn't find my office. Yeah, so I ended up on a balcony someplace. And all the buildings were painted yellow. Have you ever been to a college campus where all the, with black ironwork all around? I don't know. Anyway, why am I talking about this? I can't remember. Anyway, okay, we're stressed. We're really, really stressed right now because we've all got an overload. Mine's just as bad as everybody else's. So we're all in really interesting shape right now. So we're all suffering from what's going on in our brains. And the more we think about it, I was talking to one of my colleagues last night, and he was saying that he woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about getting his syllabi printed because his computer won't connect to the printer. So he couldn't figure out how he was going to reproduce his syllabi. Of course, there's an answer to everything. What he did, he emailed me his syllabi, and I printed them, and then he ran down and copied them. So everything's fine. morning, my goodness gracious. I know, but at 3 o'clock in the morning, I mean, you worry about this stuff, it wakes you up. So this is the somatic intervention that we're talking about. Your body changes with your, whatever is happening with your mind. The more stress you're under, the less sleep that you can get. And potentially you do something to relieve the stress. And when you do something to relieve the stress, if you do something to relieve the stress that involves alcohol, then potentially what's going to happen, you're going to have trouble. That's going to compound your stress. It's not going to help. It helps for right this second, but as soon as you sober up, you have to stay drunk all the time. If you stay drunk, then it actually works, but you have to stay drunk all the time. Okay, we're all staying drunk all the time, Johnny, so you have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay. Anyway, okay, so somatic intervention, behavioral intervention, psychological changes occur, and this changes the body structure of the function. The body, if you get sick, then all of a sudden you may get depressed. So the two work together as far as that goes. So if you get sick, then your brain you may get depressed, you may get anxious, you may get whatever. I try not to worry about things, but of course, when I'm teaching 9 classes, it gets a little difficult. Anyway, okay, and so there is a correlation.
You're doing good.
I'm sorry?
You're doing good.
Yeah. Haven't had a drink since 1976. I was talking about that with somebody last night. I haven't had a drink since 1976. My son was 4. My daughter was 5. Is that right? 76. No, 7. She was 7. I'm sorry. Okay. She was 7. He was 5. Last time I had a drink. Of course, they weren't with me the last time I had a drink. But I was a single parent, and at that point I decided, geez, I could lose these kids. Something horrible could happen to me, and then they've got no parents. Something horrible could happen to them, and then I've got no kids, and how good would I feel after that? So I stopped. Well, it wasn't cold turkey because I'd only had like 5 beers in my entire life. But, so it wasn't a huge loss. It was just, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is dumb as dirt. And I haven't had a drink since 1976. And it's not easy because society tries to force you to drink. I was in the military. When I was in the military, you had to join the club, and if you joined the club, every time you went in, you had to buy 2 drinks. So if you were an NCO, you had to join the NCO club. If you're an airman, you went to the Airmen's Club, and you had to buy 2 drinks every time you went in. And this is 1976. I was still in service. Didn't get out until 83. What am I going to do? I had to join the club, and what happened was I refused to join the club. So guess who didn't get a promotion? Because he didn't join the club. That's one of the check marks that you have to, education, you have to get good scores on your tests, and you have to join the NCO club. And if you're not a member of the NCO club, well, you must not want to be an NCO evidently. Anyway, so I fought that one for a while, but I scored so high on all the tests that they had to promote me anyway. And I was the only one left in my office, so they had to promote me. Anyway, 1976 is the last time I had anything.
That's, well, on the topic of that, do you think that, I've always thought, or kind of just wondered about it, and pondered, was that with alcohol, like especially with, it's more prevalent obviously within Native American communities, not more prevalent, but it's more noticeable around here. Do you think that's because, or do you think, what are your thoughts on, is that learned through family? Because I've always thought about it as far as, okay, so take white people for example. They know how to drink in moderation. They know how to, they know how to drink in moderation, and
they're just as bad.
Yeah, I understand that. But it's like,
we're professionals, though.
But
we are professional drinkers.
no, but I guess just not instilling that in your children or anything, but the limitations of it. And I don't
Right.
think that's really anything that, for me personally, my parents used to drink, they used to go full on,
Right, right.
until they were gone. And
Which is an interesting point.
yeah, and just realizing that, I guess not even just, I guess learning through their mistakes, or even, do you keep, does the children just keep they want to, I don't know how to phrase this. But
No, you're absolutely correct, and I have noticed this, and as a matter of fact, when I was up north, they drink a lot more than you guys do. You can complain about all the bootleggers on your reservation, but the reality is those guys drink a lot more than you guys do. The figures that we were given were close to 80% of the population are alcoholic, or recovering alcoholics, which is really high. But I agree with you, it's a lifestyle, and that's what I was trying to tell them. They keep, talking about the disease model. Well, if you change your lifestyle, then you change your behavior. And that's what I was trying to teach people up there, was that if you change your lifestyle. And I agree with you. It has to do with your family. If your family does this, then it's acceptable behavior. But the drinking has more to do with, of course, the drinking is acceptable because it's part of your family, but at the same time, it's your peers. And that was the biggest problem up there. Everybody was following each other around like a bunch of sheep, and this guy thinks it's so cool to drink, and so everybody drinks.
yeah,
And all the stories they told, even the recovered alcoholics, they talked about when they were drunk,
yeah.
all the fun they had when they were drunk.
Yeah, I've always thought
Yeah.
about it because it was funny, in California, I was stationed in California.
Sure.
And we had steak and wine when I cooked, grilled
Sure.
and everything. And my mom automatically, was like, oh my God, she's like, in her mind it was already like, these guys are gonna get wasted and they're gonna start, yeah. And it was kind of crazy when, so taking more classes like this, kind of like, observing the behavior, like, when you drink and when you versus the feeling versus the taste, I guess you
Exactly.
what it is.
Exactly.
But yeah, I just thought I'd ask that, what you thought about that.
One of the things that we know about American Indians, they tend to binge drink more than, white people tend to drink all the time.
Mhm.
And they drink a lot more than you guys do. But when you drink, you tend to binge drink. Can I say that? The reality, and they've looked at all this, the federal government's trying to figure out, where to put all their money as far as alcohol rehabilitation is concerned. And one of the things they discovered was Northern Plains, the tribes, they drink a lot more than anybody else does. This is probably the least drinking area of the United States. I know if you only see this, then you don't have any clue how much they're drinking up north, but the reality is they drink a lot more. Because traditionally, you guys don't do that kind of thing. But they don't have the same traditions you guys have. For the longest time, we still don't have any casinos on your reservation, right? Because of the gambling addiction, the fear of gambling addiction. But Fort Belknap just put in a casino about 5 years ago, about 7 years ago. And nobody goes to it except the people off the reservation. They built the thing to take the money from the guys on the reservation. It's really crazy. I have a really good friend and he lives at the casino. He stays there until they close and he gets there first thing in the morning and eats his breakfast at the casino. If he's got any money, I was up there and he was working for me. I was paying him $100 a day to help me with my house. And every morning I asked him, well, how much money do you have left? And he'd say, I blew it all last night at the casino. So here I was there for about 10 days. I gave him about $1,000. Yeah, about $1,000. He blew it all, every penny of it at the casino. Nuts. It's a good thing I was buying him breakfast, so he didn't have to pay for it. Crazy. Lifestyle. So it's lifestyle and binge drinking. Okay. It's just the pattern of drinking.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at Well, if you break it down by race, the group that drinks the most is white people. They're, like I said, they're professionals. They've been doing this for 2,000 years, 4,000 years, 8,000 years, 10,000 years. You guys have been doing it for what? 300 years, 400 years. So yeah, we're pretty good at it. The individuals that, of course, if everybody drinks, and of course you couldn't do anything but drink alcohol in Europe because they contaminated all the rivers with things that we don't want to talk about. Well, they used them as sewers, okay? So you couldn't drink the water. So the water was contaminated. When I was stationed in Germany, we couldn't drink the water. They filtered the water that we did drink. When we were stationed or my wife was stationed in Korea, boy, I'll tell you what, the water that they filtered it through charcoal, and so the water was gray, which is always a pretty color. Not if you're drinking water, but yeah, they had to filter all the water. So they had to. If you drink alcohol, it kills the bacteria. So there are a lot of people in Europe, even the kids drink alcohol. The French teach their children to drink alcohol. They mix it with water, but of course the alcohol kills all the bacteria. Anyway, we're professionals. The area of the world that drinks the most alcohol is Russia. They drink vodka, and that's, I don't know if you've ever tasted vodka. I hope you haven't. It's really strong stuff. Why do I have a picture of that guy? We're looking up his nose. We're looking at his nose hairs. If we increase testosterone in a male, will it increase his sexual response? Once upon a time, Freud tried to fix people who were gay, who were homosexual, gay males. And if you remember, until the DSM-3, until the DSM-4, homosexuality was considered a mental illness, and Freud said that he could cure anything. So at the end of the 19th century, in the beginning of the 20th century, homosexuality was against the law. It was against the law in England, it was against the law in Germany, it wasn't against the law in France, but it was against the law around the world. It was against the law in the United States. It was called, well, we won't tell you what it was called. But anyway, so he decided he was going to cure homosexuality. And he thought, well, these guys don't act as male as other individuals act. So he decided he was going to give them testosterone, and that should raise their testosterone level enough so they don't desire males anymore, so they have a stronger sex drive. That was the idea, and it worked. They had a stronger sex drive, but not for women. They just had more sex with men. So if we raise your testosterone level, and this is, if you see those commercials, I guess they're not on television as much as they used to be, but they used to have this low T commercial. They were talking about low testosterone level, and this guy's just a shadow of himself, and he needs to start taking testosterone injection, getting testosterone injections, so he's the man he used to be. There you go. Okay. So if we raise your testosterone level, yes, it gives you a stronger, you'll have more sexual response. Who you respond with is up to you, I guess, but you will have more sex because you'll feel like having more sex. I used to work in Oklahoma, and we had this guy that would come in, and we give him a shot on Wednesday so that he could have sex on Friday and Saturday. That was the idea, because he had a low T, and we had to give him a shot of testosterone so that he would have a desire to have sex on Friday and Saturday. And every Wednesday he came in, unless he was traveling someplace. But we would give him his testosterone shot so that he could have sex. Of course, he could have had sex Wednesday night, Thursday night, but of course, his religion told, no, I don't know what was going on. But he'd come in every Wednesday and get his testosterone shot. Interesting fellow. Can we cause the same effect by electrically stimulating the brain? Can we make you horny just by giving you, by electrocuting your brain? Well, just one area of your brain. Is that a possibility? Does your brain have something to do with your sexual response? The reality is, if you are paralyzed from the waist down, or from the head down, from the neck down, or from the waist down, can you still have sex? You can't move your arms, you can't move your legs, can you still have sex? The answer is yes. It's controlled by the vagus nerve. It's not controlled by your spinal column. So if you have a severed spinal column at the neck and you're paralyzed from the neck down, you can still have sex. You can still have an erection if you're a male. How about that? It has to do with the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve has to do with your sexual response, as confusing as all this stuff is. Okay, how important is this? Well, if you're a male, it's really important. If we put two adults of opposite sex together, will it lead to increased secretion of certain hormones? Yeah, anytime males and females are together. It's just the way it works. Doesn't mean you're going to do anything about it. It just means that your hormones will change. An individual, let's see, how can I say this? An individual that is only raised with males, a male who is only raised with males, when he gets around females, it changes his hormones in his brain. This is one of the reasons why when you have, well, not a military situation, because there are females around. Okay. There weren't so many when I was in the service, but there. Of course, I married two Air Force personnel. Like an officer and an enlisted person. The enlisted person graduated from the Air Force as a master sergeant. So, there we go. Maybe I should have stuck with it. She left me. It's okay. Don't feel bad. The colonel stuck with me. First, when I married her, she was a second lieutenant, so I must have had something to do with that. Okay, well, anyway, it raises your hormone level. So if a male is raised, they go to an all-male grade school, all-male junior high, all-male high school. They will have a different sexual response than an individual that is raised with females. An individual that has females in his family, mothers don't count. If he has sisters, not that he's going to respond to the sisters, but just being around the sisters will change his hormonal structure in his brain. So males who have sisters tend to treat women better than males that don't have sisters. Okay. Does that make sense? So what does that do with females? If females are just raised with females and with no males around, and fathers and grandfathers don't count. They don't have any brothers. And they're raised in a female environment. This is what used to happen with Catholic girls. Catholic schools used to be, they had girls' schools and they had boys' schools. And the females were raised with each other, and the males were raised with each other. So what happens when all of a sudden they are no longer cloistered with their own gender? What happens next? Well, the old story about the Catholic schoolgirl is really, if that is the situation as far as she's concerned, it's really true. Her hormones start to percolate, and potentially, whereas before she wasn't even thinking about sex, all of a sudden that's all she's thinking about. Because, this is like puberty going through her brain all at one time. So yes, the hormones do increase, and they are secreted when you're around males. Now, I was raised with two sisters, not very nice people, but at least they were females. So it's all I can say about it. They were just female. But if I'd been raised with all brothers, my own thinking and my own responding would have been different, potentially. Can we change blood flow to the brain with select visual stimuli? And the answer is, oh yeah. Oh yeah. So if you're in a dangerous situation, it's going to increase your blood flow. If you're in a sexual situation, it's going to increase your blood flow. And that's one of the reasons why during sexual intercourse, your body changes.
It changes, your complexion changes, as confusing as that may be, because your blood flow changes. If we change the circumstance of the interaction to include dangerous stimulation, will it cause a change in the response of the individuals? Yes, it'll be more intense. Why? Because we've increased your adrenaline level, and the adrenaline will make things seem more intense. So individuals who have survived a dangerous situation, a male and a female who has survived a dangerous situation, we see this in movies, and we go, oh, come on, that's just the movie. The reality is it's true. So two individuals that have survived a dangerous situation very often will feel more lustful toward one another and potentially more affection for one another. As odd as that may seem. Looking at people with frequent sexual response, will we find higher levels of hormone? So if we have a horn dog, can I say that? Is that, okay. If we have a guy that wants to have sex with lots and lots of different women, will he have different hormone levels than a guy that doesn't have sex that often with a lot of different women? Or a female who's a prostitute. Does a prostitute have a different hormone level than somebody that... And I'll tell you what, these ladies work hard. A lot, all night, because that's how they make their money. So they may have sex 10 or 15 times in a night. Do they have a different hormone level? There's a question for you. Are prostitutes hornier than other women?
No, I don't think so. It's a job for them, I think.
A lot of them
For a male who's not, who's not on the job,
are. Right.
who's just out going, who goes to a bar and who's frequently
Right.
having sex, and yeah, he's got higher levels of hormone, but I don't.
Or does he? Or is it a habit? And that's the question.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we talk about sex addictions. Do you really want to do this, or is it just a habit? Are you just trying to score? Are you just accumulating figures here? Notches on your post, as it were. And the answer is potentially yes, but probably no. So and sometimes these individuals don't really like women.
The ladies have to like the activity that they're doing.
Prostitutes?
To want to do it, to want to be a prostitute.
I don't know, 10 or 15 times a night, that's kind of heavy. Okay.
If someone doesn't want to do it, I don't think they'll be out there.
You know, that's interesting. We need to we need to look at the research on this, and I think there is research out there talking about prostitutes and whether they want to do what they're doing. They like the money, and usually that's the impetus is the money, rather than the fact that, geez, I hope I get to have sex with 10 guys tonight. That'll be great. I can't wait. I hope they're kinky, that kind of thing. I hope one of them punches me, because I really like that. I don't know. But it would be interesting to look at the research. I'll tell you what, you have to do an article critique anyway. Why don't you go ahead and look that one up for chapter 1. And somebody do the males. That ought to be fun. Find out if horn dogs really have more hormones. Let's find out. This is a topic most people don't talk about. Who cares about prostitutes? No, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is really fascinating. Okay, so find out if they really enjoy their job. If they're doing it for the sex, or if they're doing it for, obviously they're doing it for the money. There was an article in Sports Illustrated about 3 years ago about an Olympic champion. Well, she was an Olympian anyway. Very attractive woman who got married, and she needed the stimulation. She needed the adrenaline rush of the danger of being a call girl. So, unbeknownst to her husband, she became a call girl, a very expensive call girl, because she was a celebrity. But she did it for the adrenaline rush. Did she like it? Well, that's a really interesting question. I'm not sure the article talked about how much she liked it, but her husband stayed with her despite the fact that this lady had been a call girl for like 5 years. And he didn't know. She was running off to Las Vegas. Las Vegas was the big place to hook up with your clients, I guess. But she was charging, $2,000 or $3,000 a night. And he thought she was getting speaking fees because she had been an Olympian. And after he found out she was a prostitute, he stayed with her. I guess that's love, I'm not really sure. That was kind of an interesting case. She was doing it for the adrenaline rush. Now that she wasn't running anymore, she got injured so she couldn't run anymore. And now that she couldn't get that adrenaline rush from the competition, she sought the adrenaline rush from doing something that you weren't supposed to do. It's kind of like kleptomaniac with all the money in the world, and he still has to steal stuff to make himself feel like a real person. Does all this make sense? Yeah, okay.
We like us Navajos, we don't really, that area is too sensitive for some of us. We don't want to talk about it.
I understand.
A lot of us ladies, we do respect our bodies, and it's probably the same way for male figures. But that's something that most of us don't really
Right.
go to
Right.
or talk about. Yeah.
But this does.
But it does happen
It
out
does.
there in the real world. I mean,
Right.
it goes on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like your world's not the real world, but.
In the cities.
Right.
Yeah.
But potentially, you're going to be dealing with someone who has been to Phoenix and has, as a counselor, potentially you're going to have to deal with this. So, and this is one of the areas of human function. So, as your instructor, I'm not Navajo, so. But I understand your point of view, exactly. I'm just curious, this lady's not a Navajo. Okay. Actually, she's not even from the United States.
I'm not saying Navajos don't do that,
I
natives
know.
don't do that. I know there are some, I think,
Right.
that are out there to make
Right.
money. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, can I say this about Canadians? I'm going to pick on Canadians just for a quick second. Canadians, all the strange statistics that you read when you're looking at trafficking, human trafficking. But up in Canada, in the United States, of course, they traffic anybody, but not a select group. Not African Americans more than Caucasians, not Natives more than Asians, not, they traffic whoever they can get a hold of. But up in Canada, 50% of all the trafficking is off the reservation, which is kind of tragic if you think about it. So, and there's something going on with the Brits. Did you ever tangle with the Brits? Okay. We were stationed with the Brits.
British Marines? Well, we're trained with them, but
Yeah.
we didn't really.
Yeah. Well, they're just a little bit different. And if you read history, and of course, there's no reason why you guys have to read history, but I was a history major before I was an English major, and history is I'm just fascinated with it. But if you look at the French, coming out, the Spanish, what they did to people, the English, what they did to people, the English always treated the people that they encroached upon, the people that they captured, the people that they dealt with. They always treated them as second-class citizens. So in essence, they really made them into prostitutes. The French would marry them and raise children with them. The Spanish treated them because they were Christian, of course. After they converted them to Christianity, they treated them differently. But the English always treated any place they went. So if you look at Australia, you look at India, you look at Canada, where else have the Brits been? Any place that the English dominated, they turned the population into prostitutes. It's really kind of tragic and sad. And we don't see that in the United States because the United States wasn't primarily English, it was primarily German, more German than English. But if we go up into Canada where they were 100% English, we see things like 50% of the trafficked people are native. They don't have that many natives up there. I mean, it's a real tragedy if you think about it. I mean, that's just, that is their mindset. It's a different culture, it's a different way of looking at the world. I hate to pick on the Brits. I think they're the ones that started racism around the world.
Yeah, I was just kind of like, kind of since we're on this subject,
Mhm.
I don't know, like the way I see it, like with some people they just kind of just jump around here and there with different partners, I guess.
Right.
I think it's because they like kind of like that. How you would say, like trying to get somebody, like to say like you're trying to get a fish, right?
Right.
Yeah. So like you're waiting there, you're waiting, then until you get it. You know,
Right.
Until you get it, you know, you.
One
all
night
right,
stand.
and then you have to move on to
Right,
another one,
exactly.
like that. And then, so some people are like that. That's how I kind of see it.
Yeah.
And then it made me think about how people have these like high level of hormones.
Mhm.
And here on the ridge, you know, like I hear like different people like on the traditional side,
Mhm.
they say that, you know, some people like that, you know, like they're not like that, like kind of like that, like people that go around and have multiple sex partners.
Mhm.
They people like that, I guess some of them they had like it's more like I was saying on the traditional side.
Sure.
And some people out there, they have what they call a gist, and that just makes I don't know. There's different things I heard from how people use different things.
Mhm.
Some people use plant, and some people use like something from a deer part, I guess, and they use those to like get people's like mind, I guess. And then like when they do that, like how they would use it, they would I don't know how they would use it, but I guess they would put it on themselves,
Sure.
maybe on their hand, maybe
Right.
on their body, and then like whoever they kind of see that they want to get, they will go over there and then they would shake their hand or just greet them, and then they'd just be right there, you know, like they'll
Mhm.
kind of get them like that. So whoever that person they're wanting to get, that person's just gonna be thinking about them,
Right.
like wherever they go and stuff, and then they're kind of like.
Like a
they
love
kinda get-
potion.
Yeah.
Kind of, okay.
So it's kind of like that, you know, like some cases
Right.
I heard, you know, like different things like that. So it just kind of went through my mind when we're on this subject. So yeah, I just kind of just thought I'd throw that out there.
Right.
This discussion.
Well, it's kind of interesting because up north they have a similar situation. That's why there are a lot of people that don't want to be a holy man or a spiritual leader or a healer, because people will accuse them of trying to doing it just so that they can seduce women.
Mhm.
And, you know, so there are a lot of individuals that try to stay away from that kind of stuff, just for that one reason. Because if they do become a spiritual leader, then people will assume, well, you just did it so that you could have sex with anybody that you wanted to. And it's really kind of an interesting situation up there. Because you have people that are really good people and they really want to help their people, but, you know, there's always some detractor from somebody else's family that complains that this individual's just doing it for seductive reasons. It's interesting that it's a similar situation down here as well.
So but there's some cases that, you know, like when someone like gets like when they get that, I guess, you know, it just drives them crazy, and
Right.
and all they think about is women, and all they think about is guys,
Right.
and they just go out there and then,
Right.
I don't know, it just goes crazy. So.
You know, the interesting thing up north, they have two holy pipes, and of course that gives you a lot of power, but the complaint is that individuals shouldn't have the pipe who aren't pure. That's the idea. But now they've lost one of their pipes because they couldn't find anybody pure enough to control the pipe. So now they've only got one pipe left. This is the groom one up north. So it's really kind of fascinating. And of course, I was there for 10 years, and one of their spiritual leaders was a good friend of mine. And of course, he sometimes would talk, I could talk to you. He'd want me to sweat with him so that he could talk to me afterwards. So, yeah, sometimes he would talk to me and complain about this because, you know, he was trying to be as pure as he possibly could be. I don't know what he wanted to talk to me about. I do know what he wanted to talk to me about. Why is everybody accusing me? That's what he wanted to talk about. Humans, this is really kind of interesting. This is the reason why you can play basketball, you can do any sports. It's because of neuroplasticity. You don't have to just stand there, catch the ball, and shoot the ball. Your coach can actually tell you, well, what you need to do is fake to the right and then pivot to the left and then lay it up. And he can teach you how to do that. And this is known as neuroplasticity. And there's a reason why we can learn this new movement. It can be as complex as anything, as bumping with your hip and dipping with your shoulder and dribbling with your right hand and then flipping it over to your left hand. You know, all of this stuff, he can teach you how to make a new move because of neuroplasticity. The human brain and its peripheral neuronal structures can change with stimulation from the environment. And that's exactly what playing basketball is. It is a change in the neural environment. It's a change in the environment because you're doing something new. This is known as, and of course this is known as neuroplasticity. Parts of the neurons called dendritic spines seem to be in constant motion and can change shape in a matter of seconds. And since they can do that, all he needs to do is show you how to do it. And you need to do it one time, probably in slow motion, the second time a little bit faster, and the third time at full speed. And that will change the structure of these neurons. These dendritic spines will make connections. And now all of a sudden, after doing it 3 times, you've got it. You've got it. Now all you need to do is practice that over and over and over again, and that becomes part of your muscle memory. It's because of dendritic spines. And this is why we can learn things. This is why, I started, if you're young, it's a lot easier. If you're a little bit older, then maybe the dendritic spines aren't as active. I didn't learn soccer until I was in my 20s, like 25, 26 years old. I'm not a very good soccer player. But I was fast, and speed is kind of positive sometimes. So that worked. Now, so it's the law of threes. You have to do something 3 times. So if you're studying, remember these are new connections that you're creating. These are dendritic spines that are being activated. These are dendritic spines that are being activated. And now, if you do anything 3 times, if you study something 3 times. If you read it over once, you concentrate on it, and then look at it a 3rd time. After the 3rd time, it's in your memory, and it's not going to go away because you have created that connection. And it has to do with the dendritic spines. In a very real way, other individuals can affect a change on the structure of an individual's brain. Stimulation will induce neuronal growth. Lack of stimulation will retard neuronal growth. And right now, let me see if I can find this thing about, what time is it again?
9:54.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, I'm looking for the internet.
The E.
E?
That blue E.
This one?
Next one. Yeah, that one.
The E. Okay. All right. Oh, good. It's going to give me an advertisement first. Okay, I'm convinced. You got me convinced. So let's go to the internet. Get started now, okay. Import your bookmarks, customize with extensions, see what's new. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, wait a minute, I got this up here. Maybe I can, okay. What I want is mouse party. Dude, let's have a mouse party. Okay, here we go. Mouse party. Mouse party, learn genetics, there we go. Mouse party. Yeah, that's mouse party. All right. Come on. It's so much easier on my computer. Come on, I want to have a mouse party. Drunk mouse, party mouse. That's not what I want. Come on, let's go. Mickey Mouse, Utah mouse party. There we go. Let's have a mouse party in Utah. Oh man, it's Bing.
Are you looking for a video or?
I'm looking for this one right here. Let me put my glasses on.
Play, there's a play.
Maybe a
Yeah, there's a play.
drug addiction mouse party. You think that'll work? No, I'm still on Bing.
Say video? Did you say video?
Does it say I need a video?
Yeah.
Go to YouTube.
Or go to
Yeah, go on videos up there, yeah.
Yeah, that one.
videos? Okay. Utah mouse party. Oh, this is it. Oh, we'll do it in Spanish. No, that's, wait. No, I don't want it in Spanish.
That's what
A mouse on heroin.
Before heroin enters the system, inhibitory neurotransmitters are active in the synapse. These neurotransmitters inhibit dopamine from being released. When the body's natural opiates activate opiate receptors, the release of inhibitory neurotransmitters is shut down. Without inhibition, dopamine can be released.
It's still going, right? Yeah, it's still going.
Heroin mimics natural opiates and binds to opiate receptors, turning off dopamine inhibition. Dopamine is allowed to flood the synapse, producing immediate feelings of sedation and well-being. Neurons with opiate receptors are in parts of the brain responsible for the transmission of pain signals, stress response, and emotional attachment. Our body's opiates are natural painkillers, effective when we have sustained massive injury. This is why morphine, a drug related to heroin, is used as a painkiller.
I turn this thing on, didn't I? Yeah, okay. Okay, is that it? We don't want to just talk about heroin though, we want to talk about other stuff.
This is your mouse. This is.
That's not right. Or I want the rest of it. There's other drugs, we don't want to just talk about heroin. The interesting thing, have you ever been around somebody that was on heroin? They get real sleepy. They get real sleepy. And sometimes they get so sleepy that they die. That's how sleep, it arrests their respiratory system and their heart, stops their heart from beating, and they die. It told you that it's releasing all this dopamine. And since it's releasing all this dopamine, it makes you feel really good. But of course, it's a superficial good. It's not a real good. It makes you feel very good. I can say that. Let me go back. All right. I don't want just heroin. I want all of them. No. See, if we can go to mouse party, I can choose which one to pick up. But we need to go to mouse party. All right. That's heroin.
Before heroin enters the
Yeah, see, that's
system,
heroin. I can do it in Spanish. You guys speak Spanish? No, habla español. It's probably heroin too. Oh, okay, this is mouse party too.
Heroin mimics natural. Neurons with opiate receptors are in parts of the brain responsible for the transmission of pain signals, stress response, and emotional attachment. Our body's opiates are natural painkillers, effective when we have sustained massive injury. This is why morphine, a drug related to heroin, is used as a painkiller.
So when you're on heroin, the stress goes away, all the negative things go away. Okay, this is ecstasy. Very popular in Europe.
Serotonin transporters are responsible for removing serotonin molecules from the synaptic cleft after they have done their job. Ecstasy mimics serotonin and is taken up by serotonin transporters. In fact, ecstasy is more readily taken up than serotonin itself. This interaction with ecstasy alters the transporter. The transporter becomes temporarily confused and starts to do its job in reverse. The transporter starts transporting serotonin out of the cell. The excess serotonin becomes trapped in the synaptic cleft. As a result, it binds again and again to the receptors, overstimulating the cell. Ecstasy affects serotonin pathways responsible for mood, sleep, perception, and appetite. Ecstasy also indirectly interacts with the reward pathway. The excess serotonin stimulates a milder release of dopamine along the reward pathway, giving ecstasy slightly addictive properties.
So a couple things that happen on ecstasy. One thing, you overheat. They tend to overheat. The other thing is they salivate a lot. Sometimes they die from dehydration. Sometimes they cook themselves to death. I know.
Before marijuana enters the system, inhibitory neurotransmitters are active in the synapse. These neurotransmitters inhibit dopamine from being released. When activated by the body's own native cannabinoid, called anandamide, cannabinoid receptors turn off the release of inhibitory neurotransmitters. Without inhibition, dopamine can be released.
That's why you feel good when you're smoking.
THC, the active chemical in marijuana, mimics anandamide and binds to cannabinoid receptors. Inhibition is turned off and dopamine is allowed to squirt into the synapse. Anandamide is known to be involved in removing unnecessary short-term memories. It is also responsible for slowing down movement, making us feel relaxed and calm. Unlike THC, anandamide breaks down very quickly in the body. That explains why anandamide doesn't produce a perpetual natural high.
Yeah. So it has to do with taking away short-term memory. So if you smoke marijuana, while you're smoking marijuana and while you're still under the influence, your short-term memory is impaired. So don't smoke pot and try to cram for a test.
Dopamine transporters are responsible for removing dopamine from the synaptic cleft. Because meth mimics dopamine, it is taken into the cell by the dopamine transporters. Once inside the cell, meth enters the dopamine vesicles, forcing the dopamine molecules out. The excess dopamine in the cell causes the transporters to start working in reverse, actively pumping dopamine out of the cell and into the synapse. The excess dopamine becomes trapped in the synaptic cleft. As a result, it binds again and again to the receptors, overstimulating the cell. Meth is highly addictive because it works directly on the brain's reward pathway, making the user feel intense pleasure and exhilaration. Inhibitory neurotransmitters called GABA are active throughout the brain. These neurotransmitters act to control neural activity along many brain pathways. When GABA binds to its receptor, the cell is less likely to fire. Meanwhile, in another area of the brain, another neurotransmitter called glutamate acts as the brain's general-purpose excitatory neurotransmitter. When alcohol enters the brain, it delivers a double sedative punch. First, it interacts with GABA receptors to make them even more inhibitory. Second, it binds to glutamate receptors, preventing the glutamate from exciting the cell. Alcohol particularly affects areas of the brain involved in memory formation, decision-making, and impulse control.
And that's why you do whatever you want to do and don't remember tomorrow afternoon. Takes away your inhibitions.
Dopamine transporters are responsible for removing dopamine molecules from the synaptic cleft after they have done their job. Cocaine blocks these transporters, leaving dopamine trapped in the synaptic cleft. As a result, dopamine binds again and again to the receptors, overstimulating the cell. Like other drugs, cocaine concentrates in the reward pathway. However, it is also active in the part of the brain controlling voluntary movements. This is why cocaine abusers are fidgety and unable to be still.
As are meth addicts.
LSD acts almost exclusively on serotonin neurons. LSD chemically resembles serotonin and elicits its effect by binding to serotonin receptors. There are several types of serotonin receptors in the brain. Each is responsible for performing specific functions. LSD interacts with particular receptors, but not always in the same way. Sometimes LSD may inhibit them, and sometimes it may excite them. This is one reason why LSD has complex sensory effects. LSD and other hallucinogens excite a particular region of the brain known as the locus ceruleus, or LC. A single neuron from the LC may branch into many different sensory areas of the brain. The LC is responsible for feelings of wakefulness and evoking a startle response to unexpected stimulus.
That is it. Yeah, that's it. Okay.
This is your mouse. This is your mouse on ecstasy. This is your mouse on marijuana. See him smoking it.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thanks. Wow. It's the reading part that I can't get right. Okay. Okay, you notice what horrible things that all these drugs do to your body. Alcohol, crystal meth, cocaine, everything activates dopamine. Dopamine makes you feel good. And the more dopamine you can get into your brain, the more dopamine that is activated, the more likely you're going to do something again. And that's the biggest problem with crystal meth. That's why they say even once, the first time you use crystal meth, it feels so good. But it will never feel that good again, but you'll try over and over and over again to get the same feeling. You'll use more meth, meth. And the odd thing is that people that use crystal meth, they don't share. If they've got a stash, they use it all. It's all theirs. They're not going to share it with anybody. They may sell it to somebody so that they can buy more, but it's not like, oh, let's have a big meth party and everybody can share my stuff. It's not the way it works because it feels so good. It's got that dopamine in there. It's activating your dopamine and making you feel really, really, really good. And
And that's one of the reasons why it's so addictive. That's one of the reasons why it's so hard to get off of it. Because one of the things that happens to your body, we have these dendritic spines that we were talking about before. One of the, so we have all of these things. So if you use crystal meth, because it's toxic, because you're overstimulating your brain, one of the things that happens is you get fewer of these. And that's known as downregulation. It's your brain trying to protect itself. So the first time you use it, your brain is unprotected. The second time you use it, now we have this downregulation taking place. All those dopamine receptor sites, some of them are going away. They're going away so that you don't overstimulate yourself, so that it doesn't become toxic in your brain. So your brain will try to protect itself by reducing all these dopamine receptor sites, and that's known as downregulation. Now, one of the things that will happen, so you decide, I'm going off meth, I'm not going to do this anymore, it hurts too much, I'm hurting my family and spending too much money, so I'm not going to do this anymore. So you go cold turkey, and you try not using meth. Now remember, we had the downregulation before, where it was reducing the number of dopamine receptor sites. Now all of a sudden, because you're not using anymore, it wants the crystal meth. It's telling you you have to have it. So it's increasing the number of dopamine receptor sites. And because it upregulates, now all of a sudden you have a greater need for the meth. So that's what addiction's all about. And that's why meth is so hard to get off of. That's why speed is so hard to get off of. That's why cocaine is so hard to get off of. Because it's stimulating. And of course, if the more you use it, the more you have to use to get the same feeling that you got before. But you'll never get the same feeling you got that first time. Now you've made your brain toxic. Who do we know that was a meth head? Robin Williams was a cocaine user. He wasn't a meth head, he was a cocaine user.
Is that why he died?
That has a lot to do with why he died. He relapsed, and he went back to rehab. And after he came out of rehab, he realized that he got the diagnosis that he had fast-acting Alzheimer's disease. And after that, he killed himself. But yeah, he made his brain. Well, that's one of the reasons why Michael J. Fox has Parkinson's disease. He used cocaine, and it kicked him into Parkinson's disease. After you use crystal meth, after you use cocaine, you get Parkinsonian symptoms, and his became permanent. Unfortunately, his became permanent. He was 5'3", and everybody loved him, and he was in Doc Hollywood. And, yeah, that's what they called it, Doc Hollywood. That was the movie. Yeah, he was on television. Everybody loved the guy. He was snorting cocaine like it was going out of style. And then, of course, now he has Parkinson's disease. Unfortunate. It could have happened with alcohol. Potentially could have happened with him with alcohol. If you have a proclivity for this problem, then the more you use this stuff. So, but there is downregulation and upregulation, and it's the same way with all the drugs. You think marijuana's not so bad. People in Europe use ecstasy all the time. The problem is that when you downregulate and upregulate, one of the things that happens, if it's serotonin, like LSD and with ecstasy, if it's serotonin that we're dealing with, so you feel really, really good while you're using it, you have more, you got all the serotonin in your synaptic cleft, and it just makes you feel really, really good. What happens when you're not on ecstasy or LSD anymore? Remember the upregulation and downregulation? Guess what happens next? So I'm super happy right now. Guess what happens after you're not on it anymore? Yeah, you get depressed. Not just depressed. I mean, yeah, it's like bipolar disorder. You've given yourself bipolar disorder. And because of the downregulation, sometimes it's so toxic that you kill cells. How am I doing, gentlemen?
I got 5 more minutes.
Okay, 5 more minutes, okay. And this is the problem with drugs. I mean, they make your brain toxic. They overstimulate your brain, and now your brain can't function properly anymore. We talk about marijuana. We didn't know anything about marijuana, back in the 60s and 70s when it became so popular. It was really, really popular in the 1970s, the more popular than it has ever been in the 1970s. High school kids were smoking it. Nobody thought that there was anything wrong with this stuff. So what happened? Well, this stuff stays in your, as we have found out, it stays in your system for 28 days. It stays in your system for an extended length of time. Now remember what it said about your short-term memory. Okay, so you're affecting your short-term memory while you're smoking, you're affecting it after you're smoking because the THC stays in your system. So your short-term memory comes back, eventually it will come back, but it comes, you're really affecting your short-term memory for those 28 days while it's still in your system. Most of the drugs make you stupid, which is kind of exciting. We have what they call meth head. Somebody who's been a meth addict for an extended length of time, it takes them about 18 months for their brains to recover. For all those neurons to get back to where they were before, so that you're as smart as you were before you started using meth. It takes 18 months, and they call it meth head, being a meth head. Anyway, and I've had students who were meth heads, and when I first met them, they were really, really smart. It happens with athletes too. We see this with athletes. Dwight Gooden. Oh my goodness, his first 2 years he pitched, he was phenomenal. Nobody could hit the guy. His fastball was faster than anybody had ever seen. His curveball curved more than anybody else's. He could have pitched a no-hitter every time he went out. He lost, 2 games in the first year he played. He lost 3 games the second year he played. He was 13-13 the third year he played. He was 12-18 the next year he played. What happened? Did his arm go out on him? No, he started snorting cocaine. Screwed himself up. Who's the guy from the Giants? Lynchigan. Can't think of his first name. Tim, thank you so much. I'm a Giants. Tim Lynchigan. Wow, he won 2 Cy Young Awards. Then all of a sudden, he gets in a wreck. He gets arrested for possession of marijuana in Washington State, and he hasn't been able to pitch ever since. Is it because of the wreck that he was in? No, it has nothing to do with the wreck. It was the marijuana that screwed him up. And we see baseball player after baseball player after baseball player, basketball player after basketball player after basketball player. They were phenomenal, then all of a sudden they became famous. People started giving them cocaine, or they could buy all the whatever they wanted, and now all of a sudden they're mediocre players. They're not who they were before. And of course, this is the same way with everybody. So we need to stay away from this stuff. We need to tell people how toxic this stuff is. I mean, it really is. We just saw what happens inside your brain with this stuff. And it's not because I'm a teetotaler and I'm a boring person that I'm telling you this. It's because this is real. I mean, you really mess yourself up for the rest of your life. It's really kind of tragic. And any of these drugs can do that. Can you recover? Of course you can recover. But, if you're a famous athlete, why stop snorting? Why stop drinking? Why stop smoking pot? Anyway, and there's a television show that the guy's a really good basketball player, and he's at a news conference, and they say, well, how does he handle this stuff? And he said, lots of weed. Well, if he smokes lots of weed, he's not going to play basketball nearly as well. Your reaction time changes, and it stays in your system for 28 days. You're not high anymore, but you're stupid for 28 days. Well, not that stupid. You recover slowly. You recover very slowly as it leaves your system, of course. Okay, I guess we need to stop right now, don't we? I didn't finish the chapter, but I almost did. I'm like 2 slides away. And by golly, I think the Giants won last night, didn't they? They won the night before. They came back and they beat Milwaukee. I don't know.